Yeah. Okay.
All right, we're recording, by the way.
Yes. I thought she like really addressed the gap and like explained each source like really well, like the limitation of each source and like the details of each source. And then I was wondering if the intro had to be that long, because the intro is like really long.
That's what everybody said.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's good to get everyone's perspective.
Yeah.
What, Malika, did you have any specific recommendations on her introduction, like what you would cut or what didn't seem?
Oh, like I think you know how she went to like details about like different kind of stress. I didn't think that was really necessary because like she's not really identifying that yeah, and her research doesn't really matter with the type of different stresses.
Yeah, Andrea, do you I mean, you don't have to, but do you have, is there a purpose for these two paragraphs that will come later, or?
I was trying to give more relevance and more detail, like so that people like before they start reading into my method and like my actual research, they just know what stress is, what stress causes, and then what stress is perceived as. And then I tried to put in different aspects of stress too. But again, I guess that could be like too much. I'll try to shrink down on some of the information. Because like again, what Malika said, it's not the main focus of my study to identify the, if I was gonna identify, wait, but I am identifying stressors, so I guess it's kind of necessary. Because like my whole, like before that, I guess my whole research is on identifying stressors of students. And before this paragraph, it's all about looking into different kinds of stress and different aspects of stress. And then the last paragraph is when it goes into what are stressors and how can that be clarified. So I don't know if I should get rid of it.
Do you think in your results or your discussion it might make more sense if you address specific causes or the causes within the SIS community? Maybe that would be a time to dive deeper into that. Just a thought.
I could, but I can just shrink down too. Try to read it again one more time.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily get rid of it because I do think that at some point you'll need to explain. I'm just going to make a comment to indicate what we've talked about. Did someone try to chat or jump in? Okay, anything else, Malika, with Andrea? That we're going to move on to Annika's. We had Annika for a minute. Okay. All right, Annika, we're going to talk about you while you're not here. All right, thoughts on Annika's paper?
Annika left while she was answering one of my questions, so I don't know what.
Can you ask that question one more time?
My question was, where did you put the limitations of each paper, or whether she stated it at during her literature review or not? And because I think there's a difference between the limitation of the paper itself, like no, the whole research paper, and then the limitation of her literature review. Or so, I was just wondering because I tried to focus my literature review to identify what the limitations of my paper, like my individual research papers, and despite the limitations why I chose them. So I tried to go with detail into that. So I was just wondering if she did that or if she just didn't.
Well, wait, what exactly do you mean by the limitations of your sources? Because, like, I mean, isn't the gap the limitations of the sources?
Like, yeah, the gap would be addressed in the last paragraph of the literature review. But for me, for each of the sources, I added like a sentence, I think, to say that what I thought the limitation of each paper was. But she doesn't have to. I was just wondering if she did it.
But then also, I'm a bit curious because we're including the source, like if it's IR or IW, we're including the sources to argue one claim or state one claim. But then I feel like the purpose of just including research here is just see the trend of what research is out there, you know, not like
Yeah.
data certain things. So that's why I didn't include limitations.
Yeah. Same.
I think what Andrea is referring to is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but like in the Fly paper, if you look at this last paragraph, the study, however, failed to explore whether the developmental deficiencies could have been at least partially responsible for. I don't know. I guess you could call that a limitation, or what they failed to do that maybe your research is doing. So like talking about what that source doesn't do that you are hoping to maybe accomplish in your own.
Oh, so that would lead up to like the fill in the gap.
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about, Andrea?
To some extent, and to some extent not, because I guess for me, while I did AP seminar, I think one of the things I learned was to clearly be able to see what the flaws in each research was, and then so I put the Fly paper as my model paper, so I think that's why I followed its steps. But yeah, it's not necessary.
I think that it helps as you're reading it, you can see that the writer has looked at this source and how that source kind of relates to their own thinking and how they chose to do their research. I think it is. I don't think it's unnecessary. I think it's a good good practice to kind of, again, bring it. You know, some of the papers like brought it back to their own research very very clearly, and maybe too clearly. And then I think with this research in particular, they just talked about this is what this study fails to do. That I am assuming that their study is going to address in some way. And I think that makes your own research seem, or it gives some relevance to your own research. Like this is a shortcoming in this research. Either maybe they just couldn't do it or failed to do it, but this is where my research is going to come in and fill in any gaps from that one in particular. I know in my own experience, this is what I did in my lit review. Is I looked at other sources on school integration. Some of them were like too broad in their scope, or had a different perspective than the perspective that I was going to take with my paper. And I think that's what this line is doing. I can't just highlight that, but yeah, I think that's a good point. Something to think about. It may not be something that you do in your, it may not be the way that you're approaching your own paper. We got 5 minutes on this meeting. We'll go to the end and then meet again in the same link. But any other thoughts on Annika's paper? Right now, we've just heard from Andrea.
I think that towards the bottom in the results section, I know that like she's probably still working on it, but I think that I
All the
don't,
way. Go ahead.
yeah, all the way to the bottom in the results section. I don't, I think that for the graphs, like instead of, I mean, first I know how hard it is to get the text to like wrap around images like that. So first that's impressive, but I think that what she should probably, I think that what might be helpful to her paper is if she like just commits and like has a break in the page where there's like just the picture and then the lines start again below it. And I'm pretty sure that it's a requirement that all of your pictures have like the little italics caption underneath it that just explains like what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. That might be something that she's getting to, but yeah, that's a good comment. I think it looks better too to just have it as. Are you saying just have it as its own line?
Have it as its own line or just like make it bigger. I can't really see the scale.
All right. Let's. I can't comment on this. I'll write it down and try to add it later, or you can add it once we get edit access. Anything else?
I was gonna say the same thing as Sam did.
Visually, the graphs.
Yeah.
Anything else about intro or lit review?
Her lyric is very similar to what she said in her presentation.
Mm-hmm. I thought she had a nice intro, like her very first paragraph was pretty strong. And I think that's a hard paragraph to write because you're trying to speak broadly, but also jump into your lit review. I mean, I think your first, and this is not going to be the case for everyone. The kind of the way that I see writing a lit review is starting with like the big source first. Whether the scope of the source is huge, and it kind of addresses the biggest part of your paper, which maybe it's climate change or coral, and it looks like she starts with ectotherms, and that's they're obviously the main focus of her experiment. But she kind of, I don't know, it feels like it's starting big and then it gets more narrow. Let's jump off because we have less than a minute, and then take like a minute or two to, if you need coffee or tea, or run to the restroom, and then we'll pop back in for 20 more minutes or 15 more minutes to your Mr. Lee meeting. All right, just join the same link.